Good afternoon. I'm Paul Denning here with Denning & Company at SuperReturn Asia 2014 in Hong Kong. And I have the pleasure today of spending time and getting to know Christina Pamberg, who is the Director of Investments for Alcyon, a family office in Switzerland. She's a little modest about her background, but it goes back way back to the HarborVest days, KKR perhaps, after that for a bit. And so she's had, 15, 20 years of experience in the region. In Europe, I should say, and so she's here today to discuss with us her thoughts about Asia and the reason she's here. And we were talking before the camera started to roll about how eclectic sometimes and how much more bold the family office investors are perhaps than some of the more institutional investors. And so as you come into the conference this week and you see folks here, what kind of things do you see? What excites you?
Well, I think the great thing about this conference is that you really have market participants across the board, people from growth equity all the way up to the large cap buyouts, and they're a true reflection of really the ecosystem here. And so it's a very efficient way of really covering everybody in one swoop. But in terms of what we're interested in, of course, as a family office, we come from an entrepreneurial background. The family was in business for a long time and is using some of those proceeds from this business to really reinvest in either directly into companies, but also into the broader kind of private equity asset class. And we like the type of risk return profile associated with it. We like the long-term nature of it, and private equity really accounts for a large portion of our asset allocation for that very reason. So, Asia in particular has been of interest to us for a long time, partly because some of the principals in the family have been in business in the region. While it's an emerging market with the inherent risks associated with it, it's a risk we feel we can understand and also control to some extent because of our networks, able to reference some of the people. We'd feel a lot more cautious about sub-Saharan Africa or Latin America, just given our personal background. So, whilst it's a higher risk environment, it's an environment at least where we feel we're a little bit more comfortable assessing those risks and taking measured, calculated risks in this market.
You also mentioned that, because of your background experience, that you do first-time funds occasionally. You will look at those. You will do sometimes smaller, more opportunistic funds, and you said along the way sometimes you've made mistakes, but you've earned your air medals, your war medals, and done well. And it's really enabled you to take those risks and measure them. Can you talk about some of the things you've done in Asia that really maybe initially were a little more bold, but then it worked out really well?
Well, taking a step back, we've been investing in the asset class since the mid-'80s. There is a lot of scar tissue, and we have made a number of commitments to first-time managers, especially early on in our investment experience. And whilst we would not exclude first-time managers today, we tread a lot more carefully, and we try to make sure that those managers have the kind of hallmarks of institutionalizing themselves and really having kind of a fiduciary mindset as to how they approach investing. And certainly as regards Asia, I don't want to say that some people have been cowboys or whatever, but we've been following the region for a long time, and you go back 10 years and the skill set and the attitude to investing was a very different attitude, I think, as it is today. I think we find ourselves in a time where the industry has matured. I think talent pools, whilst having been extremely volatile and fickle in terms of moving around and jumping ship across managers, I think a lot of things, the dust has settled and a lot of teams have settled and have kind of hit their stride. So it's certainly something that makes us a lot more comfortable in considering investing in the region and
it's interesting too
increasing our
because
exposure.
Your background with HarborVest and on a large platform, very diligent. What advice would you give a new investor to the region coming out here maybe for the first time, institutional investor, and they want to get involved in Asia and invest, but they're not sure how to put their toe in the water?
Well, obviously, having worn a fund of funds hat, certainly there is a value add to fund of funds. There is a certain fee drag associated with it, but in markets where you're maybe flying either blind or half blind, being able to fly alongside somebody who has experience is quite helpful. The other thing, of course, you spread your bets, you get instant diversification by investing in a fund of funds. So there is some very strong arguments about especially once you're trying to access a region with little experience, to go with some extra help, i.e. a fund of funds. And then, those fund of funds are quite helpful afterwards, and also referencing then some of the direct bets that you may feel over time willing to take. So, I think that definitely would be one word of advice. Or, of course, financing yourself your learning curve, but be willing to kind of pay the price for it on occasion, and have either a few blow-ups. I mean, I can think of one of our investments in the region that we've been following quite closely, which, a couple of years in is just about to turn the corner in terms of getting into positive territory. And you'd think, on a risk-adjusted basis in these markets, you'd want a bit more than that. So you got to be willing to then pay the price of that learning curve if you want to be going direct early on without necessarily the experience base to do so.
And also, people have been talking more about the distressed market, the private debt market. How do you see that opportunity opening in Asia? And if so, how do you view it right now?
It is. So we have been very actively looking at the private debt space more broadly on an international basis for our portfolio. It's something that wasn't really on the radar 2 or 3 years back, but we've been spending a lot of time familiarizing ourselves and mapping that segment. I would say and we talked about that in our earlier chat, one of our worries about more broadly debt investing in these markets is really the legal framework around these securities, and the ability, if things go pear-shaped, to be able to rely on the legal system governing, obviously, these debt securities, and to be able to base yourself on that. And in certain countries, you would argue that that's a lot more difficult. I hear even in China, well, if the legal documentation states that arbitration is in Shanghai courts, you can be quite comfortable about it. If it's in some other courts in the country, things are a lot more difficult. So again, I think tread carefully, certainly, but we've been doing our homework. We understand India might be a little easier than other geographies, but we have yet to make that first debt investment in the region. But it's something we're spending a lot of time on. And
interesting. Well, it sounds to me like it's too bad you don't manage other people's money as well. So anyway, it's been a pleasure, Christina. Thank you, and I'm sure we'll hear from you again.
Thanks for the insights.